Hello friends, welcome to our class. Now we are going to start class 26 Modern Indian History. The formation of Indian National Congress. The safety valve theory held by the A.O. Holmes and Dufferin 1884 to 1888 set up the INC with the moderates to diffuse tension, therefore preventing 1857 like revolt. The origin of the safety valve theory traced back the biography of A.O. Holmes by the Wedderburns. Why safety valve theory is false? First, seven volume of the secret reports from the sadhu to whom were never found. Also, Dufferin never took Holmes seriously. The addition to that, they hated the moderates and did not consider them the mass leaders. He did not like the INC formation. Also, he feared a Irish-like Home Rule movement by the INC. Second, we were on the path of the setting up to the Indian organization. Pre-INC political activities were on the rise. Plus, even the British Indian Association 1851 tried to opening branches in Bombay and the Madras. Also, the Native Press Association set up the Surendranath Banerjee as the president. 1877 Imperial Darbar was all Indian organization which decided to meet annually. Plus, Surendranath Banerjee Indian Association 1876 held a national conference in 1883 in Calcutta. Another two the held in 1885. The National Fund was set up in 1885 for a election campaign in favor of liberal candidates fighting British parliamentary election. 3. Even if the Hume and Dufferin wanted to use the INC as a safety valve, moderates use Hume as a lightning conductor. As purely an all India and all Indian organization want to have been allowed to by British. Also, whom overcome differences among the original leaders. 4. In the biography, Wadenburn wrote so because they wanted to whom to be viewed as the patriot in Britain, also whom wanted to a strong opposition in India, as we was a liberal moderates. The ideology of moderates. First to the 20 years of the INC was the moderate phase of Indian national movement. The moderate believed in the constitutionalism, that is the strong and good state that provides a mechanism for the grievances redressal. They know that the British rule was the exploitative, but believed it can modernize India if the British pressurized. They believed in the providence of the goodness of the British rule. Moderates did not believe that India were ready for self-rule. Therefore, their goal was the limited self-government to the Indian within the British Empire. They never even thought about the full independence. They were secular in believed in the Western capitalism. They believed Western capitalism will modernize India and believed in the national unity. Swaraj. The first concept of Swaraj indicates the control of the Indians over the state. This includes the limited self-government and self-government. And limited self-government means the participation between Indian and Britishers over control of the state. Limited self-government was the goal of moderates. Self-government within the British was the goal of the extremists. Purna Swaraj was the goal of the young INC leaders in the 1920s like Bose, Nehru, Patel, etc. Therefore, extremists had the faith in Indians while the moderate did not believe in the Indians were the ready for self-rule. And this was the inside as many believed that Indians were not ready for the rule India. Self-government further can means the either self-government within the British government and full government Purna Swaraj. The self-government within the British government means the dominion status. The dominion status means the maximum control that can be given without the colonial leaving the country. The dominion status is similar to the subsidiary alliance with the British defense, foreign affairs, and the communication with the British rest of in the India. The second concept of the Swaraj indicates that rule which Indians each means the stateless society. Gandhiji wanted to enlighten anarchism. We wanted not law the religion as the source of the morality. We wanted the positive role of the religion in governance. Indian Council Act 1861. The moderate demanded was the amend the Indian Council Act of 1861 to give the limited self government. Reason for the Indian Council Act 1861. Post 1857 revolt. British wanted the support of Indians, Rajas and Jamindars. Provisions. The Viceroy Council converted into ILC Imperial Legislative Council and Viceroy Executive Council / Imperial Legislative Council Executive Council. The separate legislature and executive body both were under the Viceroy. Therefore was no separation of power at the level of the Viceroy. The provincial legislative council and governors executive council in provinces. Therefore, ILC and PLC were established by the Indian Council Act of 1861. Viceroy could nominate 6 to 12 law members to ILC, of which that list the half must be non-officials. Therefore, first time Indians could be included in law making. Indian Council Act therefore introduced a grain of popular India elements. It was the first attempt at the representative character of the governance. Some Indians first time could be nominated the legislative branches of the state. In 1861, three Indians were nominated by the ILC: Maharaja of Patiala, Raja of Banaras, and Sir Dinkar Rao, all elites. Until 1892, mostly jamindars and moneylenders from the British Indian Association were nominated among the British businessmen. Overall, 45 Indians were nominated in the form of 1861 to 92. The discussion of ILC without prior approval of the Viceroy. No discussion of the action of the administration. A prior approval of the Viceroy for the introduction of bill. The Viceroy had veto power over the bill. Therefore, the ILC of the Indian Council Act of 1861 was not a parliament, no control over the executives. Later, like the powers of the Duma after the October manifestos 1905, after the Russian Revolution 1905, executives. First, portfolio system of 1859. Legally recognized example allocation of the department to the member / ministry of the Viceroy Executive Councils. The final decision over the department to be this ministers. Second, the power of the law making by ordinance through the Viceroy in the special circumstances, life of the 6 months. And the ordinance is the law making power given to the executives cause the urgency when the legislature is the not in the session. Third, Viceroy not got the power to the create new provinces, appointment the legislative governor LG. ILC 1861 began the decentralization between the center and provinces. Centralization began with the Regulating Act of the 1773 plus peaked in 1833. ILC 1861 restored the legislative power of the Bombay, Madras and other provinces. It ensured the movement of the power from viceroy to governor, the journey of the federalism. Federalism means the more power to the state began. The new legislative council was proposed in Bengal, northwest frontier provinces and Punjab. After the Charter Act of 1853, Dalhousie created the post of LG of Bengal to decrease his burden as the ruler of British India as well as Bengal. The power of the viceroy to the frame rules and the order for the conduct of the businesses in the Council of ILC and the PLCs. The provinces, similar to the ILC and not official member in PLC, is the appointment by the Viceroy only. Prior approval, the Viceroy is needed to introduce some bills in the PLCs. PLC did not have the separate budget making power. Legislatures. It can consist of the officials, non-officials. The non-officials member can be the either nominated or elected. Non-officials member can be Indians or British. Elected members can be directly or indirectly elected. Demands for moderates. Increase the size of ILC and PLCs. The bring the elected majority and not the direct majority. The greater power to the ILC and PLC. Indianization of the services. Decrease military expenditure. Also shared the expenditure between India and Britain, as the army was used not to just for the protection of Indian but also the rest of the British Empire. Have a voluntary army. Example, allow the Indians to apply a joint trial by jury. Remove Arms Act 1878. Decrease in the land revenues. The extent of the permanent settlement 1793 to areas outside the Bengal and land revenue can't be the increased. The end of the salt tax linked the civil disobedient movement Mahatma Gandhi. In the exploitation of the indentured labor, contractual labors of the Assam tea garden link the Mahatma Gandhis in South Africa. Abolish Indian Council so that the Secretary of State for India can be function freely. Result. None of the moderates was met. The weakness of moderates. The one, uneven representation, total exclusion of non-elites. Therefore, the cause of the representing Indians was weak. INC was the mainly dominated by the upper caste Hindus, middle class men and Bengali, Marathi and Tamils. Therefore, the not truly representatives. Second, due to the social backgrounds that did not take up the anti-Jamindars issue, were pro-capitalistic and hurt their the support base. Third, they had a limited goal of the limited self-government, therefore did not want to end the British rules, as believed that British rule will be modernize India. Fourth, they did not believe that the Indians were ready for the self-government because of the low speed of the Western education. 5. Even there, the unlimited long-term goal was the dominion status. Example, self-government on the lines of the Canada and Australia and full British citizenship. 6. Had a moderate method of the spending petition, passing a resolution, writing articles and making speeches of the council work, and did not create enough pressure on the Britishers. 7. They developed a rich culture of the debates but no focus on the mass struggle. That is, no focus on the involving the common man. 8. In 1886, under the Dadabhai Nauroji, INC decided to not take up the social issue like casteism, communalism, and peasant and working class interest. They thought that might hurt and unity among the Indians. They wanted gradual reforms, not radical reforms. 10. They were part of the part-time politician, and most of them had the lucrative legal practices and other professions. 11. INC was not party but the 3 days annual function without the organizational structure at the provincial local levels. Overall, they mild goals and the mild methods. Extremists criticize their the methods as the policy of the mendicancy said beginnings. Their constitutional agitation did not create any pressure and no demand for their was met. Class 27. The positive of moderates began the project of the nation building. In 1885, the Bombay session declared the goal was the building national unity. Each session was a different part of the country and the president was not form of the region of the session. Therefore, the built in national leadership, integral awareness and unity, and tried for unity between different religion and means they were secular. 1888, no decision if the majority of Hindu and Muslim member not agreed. And 1889, the majority caused the future council reform and the should be the restoration of the minorities in the proportion of the percentage in population. 1886, under the Dadabhai Nauroji rules, INC will take up only the political question and questions common to the all Indians. Built culture of parliamentary politicians. INC session were held in democratically like a parliament. The supported Indian capitalism and the capitalism in India was a nascent stage under the high competition from the British imports and British businesses in India. They wanted to Indian economy to modernize along with the lines of the Western capitalistic models. The trend theory by the R.C. Datta. Ex-ISC wrote the economics history of India in 1901. M.G. Ranade further of Indian economic and Dadabhai Nauroji etc. The biggest contribution was to the intellectually providing that the British ruled the exploited Indian economy. Therefore, the idea of the morality of the imperialism and the right white man's burden was the demolished. And the proved that the British industrialization led to convergence of India and the source of the raw materials and the British factory and the export markets for British manufactured goods leading to the modern council relationship between India and Britain. Here, the modern implies the modern economy of the colonial power. Therefore, the colonial provinces two things: raw materials and export market. They proved that there was a drain of the wealth from the India to Britain, which prevented Indians' economic growth and industrialization. Agriculture sector was the overburden as the Indian handicraft sector was the destroyed and no modern industrialization happened. Therefore, people employed in the handicraft sector had the fall back on the agriculture sector, and India lost the domestic and export market to British manufactured goods and become a net exporter of raw materials from the earlier net exporter of the finished goods. And the revolution in the transport sector during the industrialization IR 1750 to 1850 in Britain and the accelerated the drain from the India. For example, steam engine power ships and the railroad and ports network accelerated the speed of the drain. The no imports duty on the British import India while very high duty on the Indian finished good and imports into Britain. Misuse of the political power over the colonial and colonial power. The competence of drain. Pre-19th century misuse of the Dastak plus the Plassey plunder 1757 to 1765 plus the land revenue post 1765. Therefore, the structure of the British trade changed the form of the inflow of gold into the India to the outflow of the gold from India. Post 19th century, absence of the productive tariff and import duty on the British product. Therefore, the drain is the due to the high imports. The manipulation of the exchange rate that the benefited British businesses. Home charges and not the home means the Britain and charges means the charge off for the good that service provided to Indians. The salaries, pension and training cost of the British official and the soldier. The expenses related to SOS for the India and Indian Council both in London. Earlier BOC also divides of the shareholders of the in the EIC. Import of the government stationaries from Britain. The purchase of the stores stationery still on the behalf of the India by the Britain. The interest on the loan taken by the EIC. The EIC on the forex by the exporting Indians good opium to the China. This forex never come to India, and for the fitness trade imparted goes to the Secretary of State, who gives the council bills to the importers of keeps for forex. Importers come to India with the CB. The India did not get forex from many other export. Forex went to the British government. And this was the because of the sale of the council's bills SOS for India to London, an importer of the Indian goods. They used these bills to purchase Indian goods. The FDI lead to the drain from the profit plus the gradual granted the interest of the FDI. The Indian military was used in the Britain empires. Whether the Britishers modernized India, the $45 trillion worth of the drain at the 2022 price as per the some common commentators. The any modernization was a byproduct and was the despite the British rule. Railway connected India internally and the world economy via rail to port infrastructure. Indian arguments, they explained through the diagrams. And the Dalhousie started railways in 1853 for the faster movement of the army. Railway lines focused on the connecting Indian market and the source of the raw materials to the ports and not on the connecting Indians manufacture city market and raw materials centers. Therefore, the focus was on the extracting raw materials from India to capturing Indians market for the British manufacturers. A very limited transporters of technology. Also in the low tech area by the bridge building and the tunneling. Focus was on the creating the investment, the opportunity for the British businesses and not the development of India. 5% of granted interest slash return in the investment to the companies who are also given free land and within 99 years of this lease and at the any time could be give the constructed railway lines to the government and the government will give them back their the capital with a 5% of interest. Therefore, FDI become the fixed deposit and the profit were private while the risk and the losses were the public. The guaranteed interest lead to the fast full construction, and the same money could be have been the invested in irrigation. However, byproduct was by the 1947 to 78% of India was connected by the railways, and the building of the connected roads and to the railways line, the feeder roads and enabled and the utilization of the railway by Indian businesses. Plus, the railways increase the people to people contract, increasing national unity. And the canals, the British argument. The British developed the irrigation infrastructure canal and become a role of the modern for the Asia model of Asia. Therefore, the modernized agriculture and achieve food security for India. Indian argument. The canal were built only the non-permanent settlement area Punjab, Western UP, where the land revenue could be increased. Water from canal was not free, therefore only the rich benefited. By the 1947, only 25% of cultivated area under the public irrigation system. Famines during 1860 to 70s, different part of India and Bengal famine 1943. Therefore, no food security. British argument consider the drain was waste like the development of India. The guaranteed returns on the FDI attract FDI India that lead to railways, roads and canals, etc. Indian argument. The economic growth was not as substantial, uneven regional growth, not enough the investment, irrigation, health, education. British argument. Drain was only 2%. Indian export value was in the early 20th century. Indian argument. Dadabhai Naoroji argued that the 2% was the surplus that the invest in the India would be lead to GDP growth. Indian Council Act 1892, also known as the Lord Cross Act, the result of the struggles moderates was also proved there the failure. It did not bring the limited self-government, a drain of indirect election in ILC and PLC. Grain of the indirect election in ILC and PLCs. First time indirectly elected member as the some non-official could be selected from local bodies, but it was the selection, not an election. The local bodies, example municipality, district boards, uh, universities, and the chambers of the commerce will be sent list the nominees for the among themselves. And from this the list viceroy and from the list of the viceroy governor could be select the members for ILC and the PLCs, therefore the indirect election but fake. The few more members were added to the ILC and size expanded. More non-official member as now the 10 to 16 could be non-official. 1861 half of 6 to 12 could be non-officials. The opposition cannot bring any resolution nor demand not a vote on any government resolution. The notes. The resolution means the declare intent. The opposition implies non-officials. The government was given to power to legislate even without the bringing a bill to legislature. Therefore, the legislature function were the best recommendatory or not mandatory. The budget could be the discussed for the first time, but can be either vote in the nor amend it. Therefore, taxation without representation continued. Question could be asked to the executives for their first time, but no discussion of the answer and no supplementary questions. Converted civil services changed to Indian civil services. Unconverted civil service changed to the provincial civil service, and statutory civil services 1878 was abolished. Therefore, the few constitutional demands of the moderates were made, like the expansion council, yes, but not satisfactory. Non-official majority, no. Elected majority, no. Proper indirect election, no. Indianization of IS civil services, no. Power to the councils, no. Therefore, the post 1892 moderates changed their the demand to the self-government on the lines of the India, Australia and Canada and the British Empire. And the official INC changed to the goal to the Swaraj within the British Empire 1806. Calcutta session with Dada Bhai Naoroji as present. Extremist. Reason for the rise. Failure of the moderates. Extremists had the greater support of religious masses. Increased the authoritarianism, and especially during the Curzonian 1899 to 1905. The question: failure of INM lead to the stronger INM. Answer: pre 1857 revolt lead to the 1857 revolt, whose the failure lead to the modern INM. Failure of the conservatives lead to the rise of the moderates as part of the pre-INC regional organizations, and whose the failure lead to the INC 1885 under the moderates, and whose the failure to the lead extremists, and again their failure lead to the revolutionaries, and everyone's failure lead to the Mahatma Gandhi's. Famous extremists Lala Lajpat Roy, बाल गंगाधर तिलक, बिपिन चंद्र पाल, अरबिंदो घोष. गोल क्या था? स्वराज. For most, Swaraj equal to the self-rule within the British Empire. For the some, like the Aurobindo, Bipin Chandra Pal, Swaraj is equal to the Purna Swaraj. Methods: the passive resistance, cooperation and civil disobedience. Non-cooperation means the adopting methods without the breaking the rules. Example: boycott of the British institution, courts, bureaucracy, military, educational council, and a boycott of the British good to the hurt them the economically. Civil disobedience means the breaking unjust laws. If the British do violent them, responded with the violence. Use violence as a defensive tactics. They believed in the politics by the masses, mass struggle. Class 28. The constructive work of the extremist components. A political activity mobilizes the community, gives them the skill and to enhance the confidence. The promoting Swadeshi goods and enhancing the Atmanirbharta. Anti-liquor campaign. The promote the cultural nationalism. The promote the Swadeshi/national education that would lead to Atma Shakti and the cultural nationalism. Promote community unity and focus on the community action. Works the undertaken the anti-untouchability, women unemployment, empowerment and Hindu-Muslim unity, etc. Swadeshi movement 1905 to 1911. The goal to obtain Swaraj. Reason: the Curzonian administration, the Calcutta Municipality Cooperation Amendment Act of 1899 to decrease the number of the elected members, and the Indian Union Act 1904 brought the university under government control as the Curzon 1905 believed they are the becoming factories of the sedition. Indian Official Secret Amendment Act of 1904 reduced the freedom of the press, and to the partition of the Bengal Act 1905 Why partition? The British jurisdiction, the better administration, as the undivided Bengal had the highest population and the huge area. The size of the Assam would be increases, and the East Bengal and Assam would be the LG provinces with the own civil services cadre, improving administration in Assam. The Assam Bengal Railway would become under the single administration of the new provinces of East Bengal, Assam. The cheaper maritime outlet via the Chittagong port to Assam Tea Garden, the Indian stand. The best administration decision would be have been the divided Bengal on the linguistic basis instead of the and the religious basis. Therefore, the principal primary purpose was to decrease the linguistic unity of the Bengalis and weaken the INM and INC Bengal, which was led by the Bengali Bhadralok Brahmins. Therefore, it was the policy of divide and rule, as the Bengali would become the linguistic minority West Bengal, while the new provinces of East Bengal, Assam would have the Hindus as a minorities. Therefore, the hurting the support basis. The Bengali Bhadralok took the provinces in the imagined state level election and ILC election. Bengali Bhadralok would now win. It was also an act of the appeasement of the elite Muslims, so while become the members of the council in the PLC of the EBA and ILC events. The Indians come to be know about the intent of the partition via Releasely paper 1903. Releasely was the Home Secretary. It had the Curzon units on territorial restrictions. Redistribution had the detail of the partition. The actual partition in October 1905. The Curzon dispatch to the SOS for India had the final detail of the partition. SOS broad risk accepted partition without the proper discussion in the British Parliament. Government of India 1958 made the SOS for the India director of the police policy had the top decision making authority in India. The moderate phase against the Bengal partition 1903-05, led by the SN Banerjee and CR Das, etc. was the press campaign in the Bengali Sanjeevani and the Hitbadi. Fell by October 1905. The extremist phase 1905 to 08. SN Banerjee gave the call for the boycott by the passing a resolution for the boycott of the British Goods and Institution Act, Calcutta Town Hall. The thumb rule Swadeshi movement was by the extremists. The Warsaw Conference, April 1906. Here the SN Banerjee and the Aurobindo distributed the badges of the Bande Matram and the police brutally represented it. The Bankim Chandra Chatterjee 1838 to 94 gave the idea of Bharat Mata in the Nobel Anand Math 1882 and composed the Bande Matram used in the question of the culture nationalism, cultural identity. Now the extremists criticize moderate method and the constructive Swadeshi as not enough. Constructive work was also on the scenes from the 1903 example by the Santi Niketan. Ashram 1901 by the Rabindranath Tagore had the focus on the self-reliance, the Atma Shakti via a focus on the Swadeshi goods and the courts, education and skilling, community unity and the spiritualism. And now they advocate the method of the passive resistance and the take movement outside Bengal. Moderates did not want to uh, outside Bengal. Extremists gave the goal of the Swaraj. Therefore, the began the Swadeshi movement that was not limited to the goal of the amalgamate and the Bengal partition method and activities. There was the use of the religion for the mobilizing masses. The Samitis were set up the mass mobilization. They also did the constructive work, constructive Swadesis. Example, Swades Bandh Samiti. Example, Swades Bandh Samiti slash the Badisal Samiti of the Ashwini Kumar Datta had the work among the poor Muslim and therefore the contributed to the Muslim participation. The picketing of the liquor shop and the shops is selling British goods. The processions in the form of the Bharat Prabhat ferries and the Jatras theaters. Jatras does a place the increase the awareness. Strikes by the worker in the foreign owned enterprises in the Indian lead by the C.R. Das, Bipin Chandra Pal, Liaquat Hussain. The Swadeshi education was promoted. Bengal National College was set up with the Aurobindo as a principal and Swadeshi enterprises were set up. Result extremists faced. The INC Calcutta session 1906 under the Dadabhai Naoroji respected by the both extremists and moderates. Extremists were successful. The INC passed the four cultural resolution favoring the Swaraj, boycott of the Swadeshi and national education. One goal, three methods. The Bengal partition was the condemned. The extremist party, nationalist party, was set up under the Tilak within the INC to the make INC extremist from within. However, the extremists failed to build a mass movement. The problem with the supply of Swadeshi goods, therefore the price were the high. Therefore, a no partition of the poor section, example lower caste Muslim peasant and the blue collared workers. And the low number of the Swadeshi institution arbitration courts, use of the force and the social boycott against the lower caste and the Muslims to make them the participate the hurt the participation. The Muslim Leagues 1906 ML 1906 of elite Muslim. For example, Nawab Salimullah of the Dhaka supported partition plus the ML Muslim League 1906 the South the support of the ulamas who control the rural masses. The high use of the Hindu religious symbolism. For example, Tilak worshipping Kali, etc., plus the Jatras depicting Muslim pro-British and the favoring the partition leading to the communal violence. These the features hurt the Muslim participation. With the high caste leadership, the low caste therefore they did not associate. Therefore the boycott failed. The British imports were not impacted. Surat split. 1907. The Bombay moderates opposed the extremist methods. In 1907, session was to be held in the Pune or Nagpur, both strongholders of the extremists. Therefore, moderates shifted venue to the Surat. The fight over the presidency between the L.L. Roy and Ras Bihari Ghosh. The L.L. Lala Lajpat Roy withdrawal to the prevent the split, but now the extremists demanded the reduction of the four Calcutta session resolution. Marley's budget speech in 1906 in the British Parliament hinted the features of the council reform. Therefore, the divide in rule tactics was deployed by the British, making moderates oppose the extremists. Now the shoes were the hurdle and the chair were the broken over issues of the presidency and for cultural resolution, leading to the split of the removal of extremists from the INC. 1908 Allahabad Convention session in the December. The special session in meant the full session, hence that not in December. Convention means the smaller meetings. The also known as the Mehta Congress, where the INC declared we are loyal to the Raj. The INC remained the divided between moderates and the extremists till until 1920 when MG united. Movement became the leaderless as now the extremists were easily represented by the British, leading to the revolutionary taking the charges. 1908 to 11 revolutionaries 1908 to 11 the started after the earlier movement became the leaderless. They had a two option: start a popular masses revolt slash civil rebellions and cause the disaffection in the army slash sepoy mutiny that will be repeated 1870 1857 revolt, or the individual heroic action by the assassinating the hated senior British officers to the inspire the nationalism, remove the fear of the British and strike the terror in the hearts of the British. The since the first was taught in the chosen as long term goal. The second was chosen to the immediate method. From 1905 revolutionary did propaganda in newspaper in favor of the revolutionary methods. For example, Weekly Yugantar wrote after the repression of the Brussels Conference in April 1903 1906 to 30 crores Indians should be raised the 60 crores hands to in the operation. The some revolutionary like the Sankar and the Madan Kama, Savarkar and the Madan Kama set up the secret society abroad. 1907 attempt on the life of the LG of the Bengal failed. 1908 the Bara dacoity looted the Jamindars Bara for the funds. 1908 Muzaffarpur conspiracy cave. Prafulla Chaki and the Khudiram Bose throw a bomb at the carriage of the hated magistrate King Ford. The but fell and instead the two English women were killed. This led to many arrests, including Aurobindo Ghosh in the Alipur, which come to be known as the Alipur conspiracy case of 1908. Aurobindo was defeated by the C.R. Das and was acquitted as the Bipin Chandra Pal did not testify. He later shifted the Pondicherry and pursued the spiritualism. Therefore the retired from the active politics. Tilak in the Kesari. Kesari was the Marathi and the Maratha was in English. Tilak in Kesari condemned the violence but till the defendant Chaki and the Bose on grounds that the British operation will be ultimately lead the violence arrival of the bomb. He was the charged with the sedition and imprisoned the 6 years in the Mandalay, Burma. Jinnah defended him in the court. The result, represented by the British, but gave the back to the pride and of the manhood of many felt that the Marley Minto reform in 1909 were the result of the revolutionary activities. In 1911, the partition was the annulled, but Curzon ultimately on as the importance of the Bengali in INM decreased with the shifting of the capital from the Calcutta to Delhi 1911. Delhi conspiracy case 1911 bomb attack on the Harding 1016 during the procession to the celebrate the shift of the capital to Delhi in the Chandni Chowk. The Harding was on elephant and the Ras Bihari Bose in the balcony through a bomb. The Harding survived but the stay in the hospital from 4 months. Impact of the Swadeshi movement / Curzonian policy. the lead the foundation of the mass politics plus the working class movement, the lead to the foundation of the revolutionary activities. The people become the aware of the economic aspects of the British, and boycott become the major feature of the future INM. The common man would be understand the drain because they will be asked by the boycott why buy the more expensive. Nationalist symbols become the prominent. For example, Vande Mataram become the anthem of the INM. The Tagore's Amar Sonar Bangla later become the national anthem of the Bangladesh. The method of the passive resistance with the NC and CD as CW constructive work plus use of the plus plays and the Prabhat ferries, and therefore the new methods were the developed. We permanently moved away from the petition to the masses action, and there was a shift in the leadership of the INM away from the moderates. However, there was a formal beginning of the communal politics and with the birth of the Muslim leagues in 1906. Class 29. Muslim limbs and Muslim politics. The Muslim population was 20% plus in the majority in Punjab and roughly 50% in Bengal as the per the census of 1872. The contribution of the census in Muslim politics, this lead to the politicization of the masses on the basis of the religion, as it lead to the conciseness of the homogeneous religious identity in the otherwise the heterogeneous Muslim community plus the conciseness that Indians and Muslims, Hindus and Muslim are to be separate communities. British published the report on education, employment and poverty. Religion was creating a sense of the relative deprivation among the Muslims. Therefore, the census became a tool for the dividing a rule. There was a low growth of Western education among Muslims because education was not free. Therefore, their Muslims were poor, others could not afford it. The ulama and also elite Muslim wanted to preserve the Persian culture, where the Muslim were rich landlords, where there was a low unity of the middle class profession given by the Western education contribution of the appeasement. The Hunter books in 1871 argued that the neglect of the Muslims by the British was a reason for the Faraji movement, the 1830 and the 1870. Therefore, the British should favor Muslim in the education and job. Muslim organization of the Western educated Muslim also began demanding the special status and the supported the British to the secure benefit for Muslims. Sir Syed Ahmad Khan 1817 to 18 changed the topics. A social reformers who supported the widow remarriage, female education, opposed the child marriages, triple talaq, parda, and the polygamy. However, they argued that India is not a nation of one people but a qawm, and therefore the Hindu qawm and different from the Muslim qawms. Muslim qawms should have the special status being a qawm that ruled India before the British, and to achieve the Western education is a must. He believed in the unity of the qawms, but they are different on the basis of religion, two nation theory. Foundation. Set up Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College AMU in 1875 with the goal of the developing unity among the Muslim and the Western education without giving up the Islamic beliefs, and also set up the Mohammedan Educational Congress in 1886 as a rival of the INC, and the believed in INC is the equal to the Hindu organization. He also appealed for the Muslim appeasement. British did not appeasement of the Muslim to the counter rising Hindu nationalism in the 1870 plus because of the increased national civilizational criticism post 1857. In 1819's cow protection movement and the Sudhi movements increased the communal tension. Example 1893 cow killing riots, which were not the condemned by the INC. Therefore, the post 1893 Muslim participation in INC dropped. The Hindi Urdu controversy in the northwest provinces and Awadh 1880 to 90s, led by the Madan Mohal Malviya with the demand for official language status for Hindi like Urdu. Succession in the 1900, but now the Hindi got associated with Hindu, Urdu with the Muslim, which was the not in case originally. 1897 reservation for Muslim in government job. Bengal partition in 1905. Back to the factors contributing to Muslim politics. In British create a Muslim majority provinces of East Bengal and Assam. Therefore, to appears in elite Muslims. Elite Muslim partners with the ulama who control the ruler Muslims and to ensure that they did not participate in the Swadeshi movement. The Simla depiction 1906. A delegation of elite Muslim leaders led by the Aga Khan meet the Viceroy Minto 0510 in the Simla and the demanded the reservation is proportional to the population of Muslim in council and the government job. They also demanded the separate electorates. That is, only Muslim get the right to the votes in the seats, and the reserved for the Muslims. This is equal to the basis of the partition in the future, as the product of the two nation theory. Do not have any say the Muslim politics plus Muslim candidates will represent only the Muslim interest as only they vote. And also they demanded not annual partition. Plus, they argued that the Muslim are a separate qawm and the minorities, therefore need to a special protection. The above the demand was the Minto 0510. All India Muslim League ML 1906 set up the ensure the pressure on the British so they did not back to the promises was set up under the Dhaka plus had the goal of the securing Muslim interest and the loyalty to the British Constitution of the ML 1906 and by Mohsin ul Mulk of the Aligarh movement. 1907-09 provincial ML was set up, and in 1908 the London branches of ML set up the lobby British parliamentarians and therefore the secured the benefit of in the Indian Council Act 1909. Morley Minto reforms slash CA 1909 reason. Swadeshi movement had a goal of the Swadeshi. Indian Council Act 1892 did not bring the limited Swaraj. That was the goal of the moderates. The rise of the extremist politics and the revolutionaries activities created the pressure The feature of the ICA 1909. The 1909 Act brought limited self-government. INC wanted this from 1906 Calcutta session, proper indirect election for the first time. The first time non-official majority in provincial legislative council, but not the elected majority. The official majority continued in the Imperial Legislative Council, and 27 of the 60 members in the ILC were to be indirectly elected. The first time separate electorates in ILC and PLC had also local bodies. And in the ILC, 8 of 27 indirectly elected members were to be the Muslims. Therefore, they got the more than the 20% reservation. For the first time, one Indian was a Viceroy Executive Council, meaning ministers. The right to the vote is linked with the become the criteria and the lower income criteria for Muslim. Marley started no intent of the responsible government by the ICA 1909. The power. The government could be disqualified any candidates considered the politically dangerous, strike to the extremists and carrots to the moderates. The executive is not responsible to the legislature, and the power of the viceroy continue. And the power of the legislature, the budget, can vote on the individual items on the budget but not on the whole of the budget. ICA 1892 budget could be discussed the first time but no vote. The question supplementary question could be asked. ICA 1892 question first time but no counter questions. Resolution. Members could initiate and pass the resolution, but the mandatory and only the recommendatory. Recommendatory, but for the government. ICA 1892, the opposition could be bring the resolution and no voting government resolution. Satyendra Prasad Sinha become the law ministers. Result 1861, 1892, 1909, 1935 was the most short-lived council reform and the failed to the satisfy any groups. Separate electorates and reservation lead the foundation of the partition was due to the separate electorates. ICA 1909 is equal to the benevolent despotism, dictators, but still the less harsh dictators. The Gather movement. The chart was drawn the explaining the topic of the flow chart. Bhagjatin Mukherjee died in the gun battle after the British caused the consignment of the arms smuggled from the Germany. As a result of the Britishers vowed to the defense of Indians Act 1915, a kind of the emergency and the suppressed by the Gaddar Act, that gave the pride in the manhood, boosted the nationalism abroad and in the India. India lost other generation of the deeply secular other patriotic Indians. The Home Rule Leagues 1916-18. Not led by the INC but by the Tilak and the Annie Besant. The Home Rule League did not involve the method of the passive resistance, that is, the non cooperation and the civil disobedience, and they were limited to the voting educative propagandas for the Home Rules, the Swaraj within the British Empire. The background. When the Tilak returned from the Burma in 1914, he founded the Indian national movement in the dull phases. The revolutionaries had the extremists were the repressed and the moderates were no more relevant. Therefore, the Tilak wanted to revive the INM. Therefore, the followed the mild approach where wanted the recently for the extremists into the INC and did not want to British to the repress the extremists. Therefore, they declared that the Swaraj means the self-rule within the British Empire and not the overthrow of the British. Also, that the violence has hurt the Indian national movement's progress. And also that all Indians should support the British war efforts plus that he is loyal to the crown. And 1914 the Besant head of the Theosophical Society based in the Madras joined INC. She was an the Irish lady inspired by the Home Rule movement in Ireland and the wanted Home Rule in India, and also she campaigned within the INC for the re-entry of the extremist. 1915 Bombay session of INC. Here INC decided to allow the recently extremists as the PM Mehta had died, but the INC did not agree to the support Home Rule League. Therefore, Tilak and Besant set up their separate leagues outside the INC. April 1916, Tilak set up Indian Home Rule League, and September 1916, Besant set up the All India Home Rule League. Both the Home Rule Leagues cooperated but not one leagues to the prevent conflict among each other supporters. The goal educated propagandas, that is the promoting the idea of the home rule Swaraj. Tilak also demanded education in vernacular press and linguistic recognition of provinces of the British India plus and the end of the untouchabilities. The example is stated of God tolerates untouchability, then the want recognize him as a god. The Tilak argued that there need to be the self-room not because of the British or Christian, but because of national interest of India and British are the divergent. Therefore, the less use of the Hindu nationalism in the HRLA in the fact that affords the Tilak, Jinnah and the Besant lead to the Lucknow Pact in 1916 between the INC and ML that created the INC ML unity. The Tilak and Besant promoted unity in the village. 1917 Besant arrested this the in in urging the movement, and even the moderates joined the HRLS, and also S. Iyer gave up to the knighthood. Result: Besant was the replaced the maid of the INC president in 1917 Calcutta session. However, the Montagu statement of 1917 was deployed as a divided and the rule tactics by the British. The passive resistance program suggested by the extremists in the 1917 session was the opposed by the moderates. The finally Besant decided in the favor of moderates. Therefore, home rule leagues become the defunded educative propaganda could not be converted into the mass movement. The negatives by the 1970 to 18 government represent home rule leagues plus the Madras lower caste did not support All India Home Rule League due to the Brahmin leadership. Also, the extremists failed to and the second time take over the INC. The positives 16,000 members joined Home Rule League, brought the Gujarat, Sindh, UP, Bihar, and South India into INA. The prepared leadership for the future. For example, Nehru joined the Besant's leagues and created an organizational network for the later youths in INM. The permanently decreased influence of the moderates in INM. The secular methods of help Hindu Muslim unity. Class 30. The Lucknow Pact 1916 between INC and Muslim links. The joint demand for the constitutional reform were given for the first time by the INC and the Muslim League to the British. Demand separate electorates, constitution plus the expansion of the councils plus elected majority plus at least half of Indians in Viceroy Executive Council plus universal adult franchise. Also, the self-government is the equal status with the other self-governing dominions of the British Empire. Self-government on the line of the Australia and Canada at any early date. Positive. This lead to the INC and ML unity later used by the Mahatma Gandhi in the NCM 1920 to 22 to create pressure on the British and lead to the Montesquieu Statement of 1917 and the Government of India Act 1919 also felt that the divide and the rule tactics of the British negative. A major landmark in the two nation theory was the INC accepted a separate electorates, the background of the Muslim leaders becoming anti-British, the annulment of the Bengal partition in 1911, Italy to cover Libya over the Ottoman Empire and the British did not help. The Khalifa was the political head of the Ottoman Empire plus the religious head of the Muslim world. 1912, the First Balkan War, Montenegro, Siberia, Greece, and Bulgaria attacked the Ottoman Empire in the Balkan Peninsula, southwest Europe, and the British did not help. 1912 Muslim League 1906 adopted the goal of self-government within the British Empire. 1912 First World War began when British versus Ottoman. 1917 Balfour Declaration by the Britain declared intent of the creating Israel. 1920 the Treaty of the Sevres with the Ottoman after World War I reduced the Ottoman a small Turkey plus many Turks now lived under the Greece. Also Arabs of Ottoman were not given independence. Example Syria to France, Palestine, Iraq, Transjordan to Britain. Therefore, the branch of promise by the British to Indian Muslim to get support the First World War I. British had the promise to dignify the treatment to the Khalifa after the war. Montesquieu Statement 1917. Henceforth, British policy in India was the gradual development of self-governing institutions with the view to the progressive realization of the responsible government in India within the British Empire. Therefore, now demand Swaraj was no more seditious. Montesquieu Chelmsford Reform 1919 slash Government of India Act 1919. The bicameral legislature at the center is the Central Legislative Assembly and the Council of the State for the British India. To reward the 565 princely estate, a Narendra Mandal slash Chamber of the Princes was the created and advisory body in 1920. Elected majority first time in Central Legislative Assembly, Council of State and Provincial Legislative Assemblies. 1909 only non-official majority in the Provincial Legislative Assembly. The first time the direct election in the Council of State, Central Legislative Assembly, and Provincial Legislative Assembly. Women got the right to vote but no universal adult franchise. The separate electorates was for Muslims, Sikhs, and Christians, Anglo-Indians. For the depressed classes, not separate electorates, but the reservation of the nominated seat in all the legislatures. The first time the distribution of the subject between center and provinces, but not a federal distribution. That is, a center could take away a subject and also legislate upon it. The provincial budget is the separate from the central budget and source of the revenue are divided. Example, LR to the provinces and IT and the customs to the center. The Viceroy Executive Council is not responsible to the legislature plus veto power with the Viceroy plus ordinances power plus the power to approve the reject the bills plus the power to restore cuts and the grants. The whole budget would still not be voted plus uh, 75% budget items were non-holdable. However, the adjournment motion would be passed. The 3 to 6 Indians in Viceroy Executive Council, Lucknow Pact 1916 demanded the same. The diarchy at provinces. Subjects were divided at the provinces level into the reserved and the transferred. The reserved subject would be legislated upon the administered by the governor and his official, not are responsible to the provincial legislative assembly. Transferred subject were to be legislated upon by the provincial legislative assembly and administered by the administered responsible PLA. Therefore, the partially responsible government brought the provinces while no responsible government was at the center. The idea was to be heard the legitimacy of the Indian ministers as they would not able to effectively administer even the transferred subject due to the lack of control over the official and the finance making them the unpopular. In the case of the failure of the constitutional machinery, a governor could be take over the executive and the legislative power over transferred subject. The minister from the PLA and could be the overlord by the governor in any matter. INM leaders were dissatisfied as no universal adult franchise. Lucknow Pact 1916 demanded the same. The dissatisfactory division of the subject between center and provinces and between the reserved and the transferred subject. No fully responsible government in province or no responsible government at the center. The provinces were given seats in Central Legislative Assembly and the Council of State not as for population but as per the importance of provinces. For example, Punjab military importance, Bombay's commercial importance, etc. Government of India Act 1919 did not bring the effective self-governance. Government of India 1919 is the greater than the limited self-government but is less than the true or effective self-governance. Mahatma Gandhi in South Africa. South Africa is equal to the Cape Colony, Natal and the Oregon's Free State and the Transvaal. Indians in South Africa is equal to the indentured labor, sign contract and work in the plantation system, plus some Muslim merchants, but all were the uneducated. The grievances of the Indians in South Africa, the government disenforced disfranchise Indians, which is not right to vote. Poll tax. Those indentured Indians who had the overstayed there the contract are given the choice to either get indentured or go back to India or pay the poll tax. The Transvaal banned the immigration of the Indians from the other state. This hurt the employment of opportunity for all Indians. A registration certificate that had the fingerprint were made the mandatory and were to be carried at all time. If not, then the fine or the imprisonment. And then in 1913, the Supreme Court invalid all the marriages not done as per the Christianity. 1896 to 1906, Mahatma Gandhi adopted moderate methods, sending petition, writing articles in newspapers, Indian opinion, and organizing Indians into the Natal Indian Congress. And this method failed. 1906 to 14, Mahatma Gandhi adopted the method of extra-constitutional non-violent struggle, which is called Satyagraha. 1910 to 12 was a passive phase as the mass got fired, had no successor. Therefore, the Mahatma Gandhi did constructive work on the Tolstoy form to keep up the morale of the Indians. The Satyagraha is equal to the passive resistance, NCM plus CDM plus non-violence plus the spirituality or the morality of Satyagraha. Satyagrahi is equal, truthful, fearless, and non-violent, ready to accept suffering, loves the evil doer, and hates the evil to his nature. The goal of the Satyagrahi is the irritate the evildoer so he changes the utility. With the high morality, Satyagrahi got the confidence to resist a much more physically powerful oppressive state. Also decrease the chance to the repression because the non-violence. It also lead to the greater participation. Also later moderate got the attract the non-violence and extremist to passive resistance. Therefore, Mahatma Gandhi could unite both in 1920. Method: burning of the RCs, not enrolling for the RCs, and countering arrest, and not paying the poll tax, illegally crossing from Natal to Transvaal. The even women joined the Mahatma Gandhi's movement when Supreme Court invalidated marriages. Finally, Gopal Krishna Gokhale raised the awareness in India. The Harding 1016 criticized the government of South Africa, which finally agreed to the demands on the poll tax, RC, and the validation of Indian marriages. Mahatma Gandhi arrived in India January 1915. Thank you very much.